Right, so here we are in Kemp Town, Brighton, UK, in the studio of Reso. So, how are things going?
It's going well at the moment, really busy. Got a lot of remixes and stuff to do,
Yeah.
and other kind of production work, and also just, yeah, sort of trying to make my own music again after finishing my album. The long slog of now starting new music, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
The album's doing really well on Beatport.
it's doing pretty well. It's in the top 10, which is
Fantastic.
pretty cool.
Yeah, nice. What other big projects have you got going on?
So I just did a remix for the Prodigy, and I'm doing a project. I'm not supposed to talk about it because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I'm going to do another remix for Enter Shikari as well, and just sort of helping out some other people doing some collaborations as well. Hoping to kind of get them off the ground sooner rather than later. But I'm quite slow, so it takes me a while to actually get anything done. So generally it's like a week per thing, I'd say. Yeah.
How long have you been producing for?
Probably about 12 or so years now. Well, I'm 32 now, so I got my first own PC when I was 21, but had spent like a sort of year or two beforehand messing around on, as I said, like Fruity Loops and Dance EJ, thing programs like that. They were good, really good learning curve. It taught you about arrangement and things like that. But yeah, so about 11 years, I guess, properly. Although for the first 5, it was all still rubbish. It's all learning and sort of having to make those mistakes.
Did you teach yourself or?
Pretty much, because this is, bearing in mind this is pre-YouTube. So by like issues of sound on sound or future music or computer music or whatever you could get your hands on, really. Mostly I learned from just talking to people that were better than me and sort of picking their brains and trying to find out how they did stuff, but ultimately it's a lot of kind of trial and error and just, sort of blunt force working your way through it and making stuff. It's like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I'm still doing that now. Like, you learn a new trick, you're like, oh, that's really great. Or, you try and get a bit better at a certain area. Like I'm trying to get better at mix downs. This is the constant source of frustration. But, I wouldn't consider myself a mix engineer at all, but you have to be a kind of master of all trades when you're doing in the box sort of self-production, as it were.
Yeah. You do everything yourself, right?
Yeah. So apart from mastering, but yeah, everything else, it's all just me sat there in the box kind of thing. You could, I've said it before in different interviews and stuff, but the day you wake up and you think you're as good as you can be, you might as well stop, because what have you got left to strive for? So there's always somewhere you can improve upon. Like, I'm trying to improve my mix sounds, I'm trying to improve my musicality and theory knowledge and stuff like that. You can always improve your sound design. There's always stuff to be improved on. And that's the great thing about, as I was saying, I learned pre-internet, but now if I'm a bit stuck on something, there's 1,000,001 tutorials that I can quickly look at and be like, that's how you do that, or it's one way of doing it, and you use it as a jumping off point rather than copying it, like doing carbon copies. It's nice to just sort of use that and think, okay, how am I going to apply it to what I do?
What artists have been your inspiration?
That's such a broad question. It's such a broad question.
I mean, in your field, say,
the obvious examples of people in like DnB, like Noisier, Faith, Calix, and TB, the kind of more high-end neuro-y producers, just because that it's all about the sound design, that thing. So I find it's kind of like the technical metal of drum and bass, in the sense that it's not frowned upon to show off and do loads of production tricks and things like that. I'm nowhere as near as good as those guys, but it's definitely massively influential and inspiring to try and get to that sort of level, I guess. But then I really like Ivy Lab, who are current guys at the moment, who have a completely different sort of take on it. It's still a bit techie, but it's quite smooth and musical as well. People like Bookham, like LTJ Bookham from back in the day, and Dillinger and things like that. There's such a broad range just within drum and bass itself, and then going outside of drum and bass, there's like a million things, people like Steve Reich, compositionally and melodically and harmonically, and I love a band called Animals as Leaders, like a progressive metal band. It's amazing. It's just really technical but musical at the same time. Obvious things like Brian Eno or Steve Roach, ambient people, Boards of Canada, Aphex. It's quite obvious stuff that most people are into. It's quite a broad spectrum, but trying to kind of nail the sort of touchstones of those sounds and styles is interesting to me. And the way to incorporate it into styles that not necessarily have that in the first place. So putting Boards of Canada style sounds into drum and bass tracks and that kind of thing. It makes it interesting. That's how you become who you are musically, by all your different influences and mixing them in that pot and seeing what works. Sometimes it sounds like shite, but that kind of thing really. Again, it's obvious stuff.
So at what point through your production career was there a turning point where things took off? Or
so when I was at uni, I was mainly trying to be like a session drummer, I guess, and that was kind of my main focus. But I was always sort of trying to make some drum and bass and new school breaks, just beat driven music. But it was around 2006, and that's when dubstep kind of kicked off and I found out about it. So I guess that was the turning point really, where the sort of entry barrier of production wasn't so high. Like dubstep was well produced, but it was more kind of about the vibes, I guess. And you could do kind of minimal stuff without it. This is the same time like Pendulum would come out in drum and bass. So there's that sort of entry barrier of your tunes had to be at a certain level to get them played in DnB, it seemed. Whereas dubstep was more just like, you can do what you want, and even if it sounds a bit ropey, as long as it's got bass weight and it's about 140, that's it. So it was kind of the perfect thing for me, because breaks was sort of dying on its arse a little bit, and it all just sort of turned into cheesy bootlegs. So hearing like early dubstep really kind of was like, oh, that's what I've been looking for, and I can do this. It was the first time I was like, I can do this, and it sounds good. So that was it really. So a tune that I did for my major project at uni actually got signed to the dubstep forum label. It's called Curse Dub. So I guess that was the turning point, and also just being able to go down to Forward and to the DMZ nights and meet people and give them tunes and that kind of thing. That tied into what I said before about talking to people who are better than me and making tunes with them and learning off them that way. So that was definitely that. Around 2006 was definitely that sort of turning point where it's like, yeah, I can do this, and it all started kicking off a little bit. It was quite good.
Excellent. And you're working with Hospital Records now?
Yes.
Is that your main label?
Yeah, I'm signed exclusively to Hospital now. I was with Civil Music, but the deal with Hospital is it had to be exclusive. So happy to do that.
Yeah, they're a great label.
They're good. They're a good bunch of guys, and it's a good look to go from, I was known for dubstep to turn into be making sort of predominantly drum and bass now. It's a good look to be signed to one of the biggest drum and bass labels and to have them really support me and get my stuff out there and sort of be like, yes, I do drum and bass now. Even though I always did it, but it's the main focus. But yeah, they're a great label, and they're just a great bunch of people. So
cool.
I enjoy working with them.
And are you DJing quite a lot, or is it mainly production?
Mainly doing production stuff at the moment because I've got so much on, but I've got gigs and stuff coming up, like a couple of months, which is sort of enough for me.
Any big ones?
Where's a big one? We're going to play at Secret Garden Party, so that should be fun. I've never been before, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And where else? There's a couple of like festivals and things, and just sort of more regular shows. But I quite like the small regular shows where it's like 300 people in a basement with a big sound system. That's a lot of fun. And also, yeah, just playing at like the hospitality shows as well. They're always great fun if they do. They always seem to feel quite big venues. So it's a different experience. I kind of get the whole range of different DJing experiences from being on a big stage to being in a little tiny booth, and I enjoy them all equally. I probably enjoy the small ones a bit more actually, just because it feels a bit more intimate, and you can kind of. It's not about playing. You don't have to play like big tunes, as it were. Yeah. You play stuff a bit more sort of experimental or a bit weird, and people don't run away. I enjoy that.
Cool. I see it's just disappeared on the screen in the background there, but you work with you work in Logic.
I am in Logic. I'm still in Logic 9. I haven't upgraded yet. I need to do it sooner rather than later. But it's that classic thing of like, I'll just start something, and then I didn't really want to upgrade until I'd finished what I'd started on there. So get them done. Once I've kind of completely finished everything I'm working on, then I'll sort of do the jump. Because I know it's going to take me a week or two to get my head around the changes that they've made in Logic 10. But I'm excited about some of the new features in it and stuff. So yeah, nice. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. You haven't thought about sort of moving over to anything else?
I'm too lazy. Yeah. I thought about if I was going to move to anything, it would probably be Ableton, because it seems that you can do so much in it quite quickly, whereas Logic does seem a bit slow. But it's the only one I've ever learnt on, apart from when I was about 17, having a few goes on Fruity Loops and Cubase. But yeah, I've just sort of got to grips with Logic, and I still have the same shortcuts as Logic 5. Yeah. So I've just kept it the same. So yeah, if I was to learn Ableton, it's going to take me like a couple of months to get to grips with it. I just haven't got the time at the moment. Maybe if I get some time in the future, I'd learn it. I'd like to learn it because it really helps with doing collaborations. It's good to know a little bit about every DAW, because not everyone is on Logic, and so it can be quite restrictive, whereas times I've done it before, I've just sat there and I can make sounds and use synths and things like that, but when it comes to the kind of hardcore nuts and bolts programming of MIDI and automation and things in different programs, then I'm a bit like, can you do it? So it'd be good to know a bit of everything, but yeah, it's just a time thing, and I'm lazy, really.
How long on average does it take you to do a track?
It really depends. For a more kind of techie sound designy drum and bass track, it can take anything up to a month. On average, I'd say a week at least to do any kind of labour intensive track, and that's if I work on it. It's usually about 50 or 60 hours, 10 hours a day kind of thing. Obviously, sometimes a lot of that time can be me just sat there going like, I can't think of anything, or you have to wait for that moment of inspiration to strike. But sometimes I can make a track in a day if it's like a skitty little hip hop type thing, and you can do it quite quickly, because it's more about the vibe rather than the sort of intricate technical production process. But yeah, at least a good week. So it's getting worse, because the sort of older I get, or the music I make now, it's almost like you're competing with yourself, so you're trying to one up yourself. So it's like how much more complicated and tech can I make this? So it just leads to bigger arrangements, or it just takes a long time to pre-prep the sounds, and so you can't, I don't know, it's not like I sit there with a timer on keeping track of how long I've spent on stuff. I just know, it's like, okay, I know by the end of it I'm drained. It's like, right, have a day off, go to the pub, and then come back and then try and do some more. Other days, like, you're really inspired, you can do it really quickly, so you might knock it out in 3 days. Some days it could take 2 weeks, because it's just really like trying to get blood out of a stone. That's the annoying thing about creativity, I guess. It's not like a tap that you can just turn on. It's like there are certain things you can do during the day, like making certain sounds, or processing kicks and snares and chopping up breaks, that kind of thing, sort of like the legwork stuff. But when it comes to the actual coming up with a hook and a riff, or the idea of your tune, sometimes that can just take, I've struggled with that for days before. Other times it's like, bam, oh, that's amazing, and you've got it instantly. So, but yeah, a week, I reckon, at least.
Do you tend to use the same kind of method each time? I mean, do you lay it out? Some people, obviously, they work on a groove or a loop just over and over, especially if they work in something like Ableton Live. But do you find you work kind of that way, or do you do more straight into the arrangement and blocking it out?
Generally, I'll go like that. So I'll try and get my kind of 8-bar loop or something
Yeah.
and make that sound good. Then I just do a skeletal arrangement, so I'll paste it along for however long, like, you know, at least kind of like 128 bars or something, and then go back and be like, okay, sometimes I'll just work from the drop and get like a finished 64 bars and then go and work on the start. I don't know, it kind of depends. It depends what you're feeling. Sometimes you've got an idea for the start of a tune, so start on the beginning and then you work like you would how the tune's set out kind of thing. Other times it's like working backwards, so you've got that main bit and then it's a puzzle trying to fill it around it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it sort of depends what mood you're in or what you can be bothered to do or what you've got the idea for. You know, I guess it changes sort of every track, you know, and depends what, if it's a more dance floor track where it's a kind of standard 32-64, 32-64 arrangement, then it's like, okay, I'll work on the drop, like what's the focus, whereas if it's more of a, like a proggy thing and there's not really like that sort of defined DJ friendly bar structure, then I'll probably work on it more from start to finish and try and make it work as a piece of music like that from start to finish. Do you see what I mean? So I constantly end up listening to it from the beginning to make sure everything flows nicely and it actually works as a bit of music rather than just sort of a DJ tool type thing. I don't know, it's different ways of approaching it. It depends what kind of track you're trying to make, I find.
So the track you're going to be talking about in your first set of tutorials for us is Move It?
It's Move It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that fun to make?
That's a fun one. That was more like what I was saying, where that was kind of, I just didn't fully wanted to make like a dance floor tune. So it's got quite a straightforward arrangement structure, and yeah, just sort of thought about that. Okay, it's a bit more of a formulaic tune because I wanted it to be dance floor friendly, DJ friendly, and something I could play, and it has got that impact. So it's all about the big build up and the drop. It's not a musically interesting piece. You know, it's a one-noter, but sometimes they're the most effective, especially in a club on a big rig. Like, it's not so much a listen-at-home piece of music. I still try and get elements in there that make it interesting so that you can listen to it at home, but it's definitely more of a dance floor tune, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are the main things you're going to be focusing on in the walkthrough?
So, obviously going to focus on how to get incredibly fat drums. The sort of bus processing involved, the individual channel processing of kicks, snares, the layering of the kicks and snares, and hat patterns, and the different elements that go into kind of making basically really fat beats, and also the same to do with bass as well. So the sound design involved in the bass lines and the sort of post processing of that and the different kind of effect chains, because they're all so important. And then also just the extra little kind of polish on the top of like little sort of incidental one hits and reversals and things like that, just to keep it interesting as it goes along, and doing variation within all of those things to keep it an interesting piece of music. The idea is simple, but you can make it very kind of complicated and interesting in other ways. And it is sort of, I'll be talking about those little production tricks and how to kind of make your simple 4-bar idea stretch for 5 minutes and the variations involved in that. And yeah, also just like the, going about the creation of the sort of synth patches and extra sounds involved in the intro and breakdown and layered on top of stuff, just to really kind of how you can get that impact in your tunes, and how I sort of go about doing it to make it sound full but without being too crowded, which can be quite difficult to achieve.
Brilliant. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, see you soon.